For you, Benji, what gave rise to this idea of an album? How did that came up to you, and then how did you kind of try to get Joel to do it?
It was really mainly just a feeling, and I had this concept for this. The original album title was "Cold Song,"
okay,
which is the title of one of the songs. And to me, that like phrase, it really kind of sums up the feeling of the world and life. Mm. If you think about it, like life is a cold song. You know, because like song is an inherently positive word. You know what I mean? There's something really uplifting about the word song, and cold is like that's the pain of life. You know what I mean? So it's dark, but it's hopeful. Right. So you know what I mean? It's dark, but it's beautiful and hopeful. You know, so I had this idea that like we had all this shit to deal with that we've been dealing with, and as we gotten older, we've gotten much better about like dealing with our feelings around a lot of stuff from our childhood and life in general. And I think Joel having kids and having 12-year marriage, myself, you know, having a marriage. You grow. You just grow in ways that you can't grow when you're alone, you know? And so I had this idea that we should really, like, and I say puke up, like, our feelings, because it's the only way I can describe not just unfiltered. Mm-hmm. Just, like, whatever's in here, like, let's just, like, hum melodies until and, like, whatever the first word that pops out is, just go with it. Don't control it. Don't go, we need to write a song like this. Just let this, like, whatever the first word is that comes out, grab it, and then see what follows and then all of a sudden these songs are coming out. And it's like, some of the songs on this record, it was like one shot writing a verse when you go, holy shit, it wasn't planned. I'm rhyming words and I'm letting feelings come out. And then all of a sudden I'm getting visual imagery from my childhood. I'm getting visual imagery from so many experiences and, like, you know, good and bad, and just letting that happen and then seeing what words jump out and just, like, letting this thing happen. It was a very interesting experiment for us because when I think about it, that's how we used to write our songs. Before we had someone over our shoulder going, you guys need to do this because now you're this. And you want to make everyone happy, but all of a sudden it doesn't belong to you. Mm-hmm. And our first record, those songs, man, we didn't know what we were writing. We were just letting it come out, you know what I mean? The songs like, you know, Motivation Proclamation is a song off our first record. Mm-hmm. That song is, like, overtly about depression. Overtly. Right. It's about depression and self-loathing. We didn't know what we were writing about. We were just rhyming words. You know, but it's like subconscious. Your feelings come out. They want to come out. You only need to let them. And, like, on this record, it was like, they came out, man, you know? And so every song on this record is a genuine, unfiltered, direct from the source, just expression. So everyone who listens to this record can really know however it makes them feel is a part of our experience, and we probably share that with some people, you know? Some people probably will hear these songs and go, I know. It's like, I feel like we will, when you listen to this record, some people are really going to go, you know what, I don't know exactly what he's talking about there, but I feel I have a similar experience, and this is what means this to me. Or they're going to know exactly what we're talking about, and they're going to go, I genuinely relate to that. So it was really interesting, because I do feel like somehow we found our way back to that doorway of pure, like, honesty. Creative, yeah. And expression. Somehow.
And Joel, you mentioned earlier, mentioned the word catharsis. But I can also imagine that going through this, it can be quite confronting. And so what was that like? Was it, I mean, a song like Prayer, there's so many things in just that song.
Prayers was probably like a classic Good Charlotte commentary on the world in this moment as we see it. And ultimately, for me, growing up in a very religious place with a bunch of people who find themselves to be very religious. I've always had my own relationship with that idea of religion and the idea of praying and the idea of, ultimately now we live in a world where we're just facing tragedy all the time. We all have a front row seat for kind of a constant loop of tragedy. And it's a question like, are we really praying for each other? And do we hear each other? And I understand that anyone out there listening who may call themselves a very religious person, and I'm not attacking religion or religious people. I guess I'm just asking the question: is it an idea or is it an action? Is it a word or is it are we loving each other? Are we feeling each other? Do we have empathy for each other? If the root of most organized religions is love one another and love your neighbor as yourself, are we doing that? Or are we looking at each other as labels, as idea? Like, are we looking at each other as an idea of what we think they are, instead of a real person with a real life, with real feelings, with real experience that deserves to live their life and to be felt and heard? And so for me, I question all of it because I see so much pain all around me, and I see tragedy, and I look at people dismiss each other all the time because of a label, because of a difference. And so prayers is kind of that bigger question. It can feel a little confronting the way that I put it, because I do kind of feel like if I'm ever going to comment on society or confront anyone, it's always in my music, and it's always been a part of me that every now and then I do get a certain attitude towards something. Who I am is someone who is not that confronting.
It's that spirit of rebellion, though, and you have to be strong, do it in a strong way.
Yeah, and I feel like I want people. I'm hoping that we ask each other the right questions and we ask ourselves the right questions. And I'm not telling anyone not to be religious. I'm just wondering if it's an idea that they are following out of fear, or is it something they're living every day in the real sense of the word, and taking on as and I want people all to be the best they can be, and so it's not a critique of anything like that. It's just a question. Like, what do our prayers really mean, and do they mean anything at all? Or do we mean it, or do we just say it, or I'm questioning the whole idea.
That song starts out with a real simple, real colorful kind of depiction of feeling completely isolated. Like, born on a lonely planet, right, full of broken dreams. No one understands me. It's the experience of being alone in the world until you meet the person who makes you feel not alone anymore. Because that's a special person who can do that. You can meet a lot of people, and you can spend a lot of time with people, and you can still feel alone. But when you meet that person, for me, my wife, you meet that person who makes you feel not alone anymore. And you connect, you really show up for each other. And then all of a sudden, everything else begins. And you start to ponder, life and existence. And then the song dives deeper into the problems of the world. And it's funny because there's this whole political agenda going on in our country right now that has everything to do with keeping people out, right, dividing, protecting, building a wall, all these things, which is everyone has that. It's a free country where everyone gets to believe what they want, say what they want. But it's really kind of the question is not a judgment. The question is just it's funny because that kind of political agenda, which is also seems to be very not very compassionate and empathetic towards people who come from different walks of life and people who come from different places and different, ethnicities and different, groups of people. There doesn't really seem to be a lot of compassion, and like you kind of like not judging, just wondering, like, because it does come from the more religious side of our country, which is weird. It's so weird. It's like so it's like you can't get married depending on your sexuality, gender, identity, all these different things, and like who can be in the military, who can serve their country, who can, and all these things. And it's kind of like we don't get involved in politics, but we do ask questions and we do poke like certain things we see where we go, what's that about? So these political conversations and agendas are coming from the more religious.
But we've been fighting that fight since a song is.
But like prayers is just saying, it's like prayers,
Right.
it's like these things are coming from the religious side of our country. It's really interesting when you think about that. Like it's like
It's reflecting on certain behavior that
We've been asking that question since the anthem, though. It's just when I was
Right.
young, I didn't know how to say it, and I was just kind of pissed off, and I said, I don't want to be like you. I don't know what I want to be, but I don't want to be like you. And I
want to be an individual. I want to think freely.
I don't want anyone to be categorized as a thing.
Right.
We're all people living real lives. We deserve to be heard and felt.
We also deserve the right to identify ourselves with what we identify, and
Right.
feel free and feel
Like it's okay.
like it's okay and feel safe.
And
Exactly.
I guess I'm just asking everyone that question, like, really, what's the point of all this? What do our prayers really mean? Do they mean anything at all if we're saying we're praying for one another, but we're not extending our hand and we're not actually coming to the middle and going, you know what, like we can be different.
If you're saying that in the name of God, why does it feel so hateful?
It's an interesting, very
Really
interesting topic.
man. So that song is like really important, I think, on the record, and there's a bunch of others, man. I hope people check it out.
I have one last question because I think I'm going over my time, but anyways. Having said what you just said, and the album being titled Generation RX, which is a reference in a way to the opioid crisis,
Yeah.
Is this record meant for somebody, or meant for aimed at somebody in a way?
This record is really meant for everyone. I mean, the opioid crisis is really just like a human crisis of like, where did we stop actually dealing with pain, and there's so much, even that's a whole other thing where it's like we've come so far as a society, but we haven't, and like, so
For me, like, what is Generation RX? It's anyone from my age down to 14-year-olds. Like, we've all got a front row seat to the modern era of here's another thing to pacify you.
Big Pharma.
So, whatever it is, whether it's big pharmaceuticals or social media or any other thing that can pacify us from being in our real life and experiencing our real life and working through the human experience, and the humanity gets taken out of everything. And for me, I watch all around me and I never say shit because I just don't know what to say. I can't participate in the tidal wave on Twitter that's taking someone down, or I'm not saying anyone's right or wrong. I'm just watching human beings fight with each other, and I don't know what to say. And this record was a reaction to all of it. To me, this is what I have to say. And it isn't just about you, it's about me too. I feel like I'm sharing, like, I opened up on this record and talked about anxiety, post-traumatic stress, self-esteem,
depression,
relationship to religion, and the questions, all the things that I've been kind of processing and dealing with. And I never can participate in the conversation because I feel like Number one, how can I say something when people already have an idea of what I should think and what I should say? And I don't believe that that sometimes I have a place to say anything in the conversation, because I also want people to be free, you know. But for me, like it was my own personal commentary on the world as I see it right now, and from my perspective and my experience over the last 20 years of kind of being in this weird position of watching it all, but also being an entertainer and being a person in front on stage that I am not, to the person who I am in real life that is not like the person on stage. That is a very interesting place to be, where I realize there's like there's complexities to it all, but like this is my kind of take on all of it, and Generation RX kind of sums it up for me. And I don't know why it makes sense to me, but it just does.
Yeah, and I think that there's just like Generation RX is a really great, I think, chapter for our band. I think that there, like Joel said, there's things we've always done. We've always stood up for people. We've always asked questions, and we've always encouraged people.
And we've always owned that, like, we're not going to say it all the right way.
And the world's, man, it's a funny place, man. I just have a hard time believing any religion that pushes an agenda of like hate. I have a hard time believing any company that pushes the agenda of money over well-being. I have a hard time like with the idea.
I have a hard time buying into shaming people.
Yeah. And like I have a hard time with like the idea that like there's it's just like, you know, the cannabis industry. There's so many great options out there for people. I'm a believer in all, and like you look around the world and not everyone can have it, and you go, man, it's so weird, you know. So I think we just have to ask these questions because it's just who we are, like we, you know. But we're not political,
Right.
and we're not religious, and we're not.
I'm also not pretending like I figured anything out and I have this. I'm not like.
It's an open question. It's kind of just an open question, you know. I think it's more of like a discussion. I think.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.